Right now, inside your body, a species that went extinct 40,000 years ago is still making decisions. Not conscious decisions, genetic ones. Tiny biological instructions that influence how your body responds to disease, infection, cold, and even altitude. And the strangest part? Most people have absolutely no idea. Because if I asked you how many species of humans exist today, you'd probably say one, us. But 50,000 years ago? The world was crowded. There wasn't just one type of human. There were several, and some of them never completely disappeared. Imagine stepping out of a time machine 50,000 years ago. You look around. The forests feel familiar. The mountains feel familiar. But the people don't. Because some of them aren't quite human. At least not modern human. Across Europe and parts of Asia lived the Neanderthals. Powerfully built, adapted to cold climates, masters of survival. And further east lived an even more mysterious group, the Denisovans. In fact, they're so mysterious that scientists still don't know exactly what they looked like. No complete skeleton, no complete skull, no preserved body, nothing. Just a few fragments, a finger bone, a couple of teeth. That's it. Imagine discovering an entire branch of humanity from a finger bone. It sounds impossible. But that's exactly what happened. When scientists first analyzed the DNA from that finger bone, they expected it to belong to either a modern human or a Neanderthal. Instead, the results made no sense. The DNA didn't match either group. At first, researchers thought there must be a mistake. Maybe the sample was contaminated. Maybe the equipment was wrong. Maybe the data had been mixed up. But the more they checked, the stranger it became. The finger belonged to a human species nobody knew existed. Imagine discovering an entire chapter of human history. Because someone picked up a tiny bone from the floor of a cave. For decades, scientists believed human history was simple. Modern humans left Africa, spread across the world. Everyone else disappeared. End of story. But DNA told a different story. A much stranger story. Because when our ancestors met Neanderthals, they didn't just fight. They didn't just compete. They had children together. And those children had children. And those children had children. Until eventually, their DNA reached you. Today, if your ancestry comes from Europe or Asia, around 2% of your DNA comes directly from Neanderthals. 2% doesn't sound like much until you realize what it actually means. Neanderthals vanished around 40,000 years ago. Yet pieces of them still exist inside billions of living people. Think about that. An entire species disappeared, but parts of it survived, inside us. And Denisovans left an even bigger mark in some parts of the world. In Papua New Guinea and parts of the Pacific Islands, people can carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA, the highest concentration of archaic human DNA found anywhere on Earth. For years, scientists assumed this ancient DNA was basically a fossil. Interesting. Ancient, but inactive, like an old photograph sitting in an attic, a relic from the past. Nothing more. Then researchers looked closer, and everything changed. Recently, scientists made a discovery that stunned geneticists. They weren't asking whether Denisovan DNA existed. We already knew that. They wanted to know something more important. Was it still doing anything? Or was it just sitting there? The answer shocked them. More than 3,000 Denisovan genetic switches are still active inside living people. Right now, not in the past. Today, while you're watching this video, these ancient fragments are still switching genes on and off, still influencing how the body works, still affecting human biology. 40,000 years after the species itself disappeared. And where were many of these genetic switches found? The immune system. Think about what that means. 45,000 years ago, your ancestors entered unfamiliar lands. New climates, new animals, new diseases. Many didn't survive. but some inherited useful Denisovan genetic variants. Tiny advantages, small improvements, enough to survive, enough to have children, enough to pass those advantages forward, generation after generation, until eventually, those ancient instructions reached you. In a very real sense, your immune system is partly running on software written by a species that no longer exists. Imagine buying a brand new computer today and discovering that part of its operating system was written in 1975. That's essentially what's happening inside your body. Ancient biological code, still running, still working, still shaping outcomes. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Ancient DNA isn't always helping. Some studies suggest certain Neanderthal genetic variants may improve protection against some viruses, while making people more vulnerable to others. The same inheritance that once protected your ancestors may create disadvantages today. Why? Because evolution doesn't care about the future. It only solves immediate problems. A genetic solution that worked perfectly 50,000 years ago might not work perfectly now. Imagine using antivirus software designed for a computer from the year 1975. Some threats would still be blocked, others wouldn't. The software wasn't built for today's world, and neither was ancient DNA. The Neanderthals never had to worry about modern diseases. They never encountered the viruses we face today. Yet parts of their biological toolkit are still operating inside us, sometimes helping, sometimes getting in the way. But immunity is only part of the story. In Tibet, many people carry a Denisovan gene variant that helps them survive at extreme altitudes. Without it, life high in the mountains becomes much harder. Most people climbing to those heights struggle for oxygen. Their bodies panic. Their hearts work harder. Their lungs fight to keep up. Yet many Tibetans function normally, partly because they inherited a genetic shortcut, a solution that Denisovans had already spent thousands of years developing. In Arctic populations, scientists have found ancient genetic variants linked to how the body processes fat and generates heat. Again and again, the same pattern appears. Humans entered difficult environments. Other human species had already adapted. And instead of starting from scratch, we borrowed their solutions. It's one of the most underrated survival strategies in human history. We didn't reinvent everything ourselves. Sometimes we inherited answers from people who got there first, which leads to one of the strangest conclusions in all of science. We didn't completely replace the Neanderthals. We didn't completely replace the Denisovans. We absorbed parts of them, the best parts, the useful parts, and carried them forward. And here's a question that sounds like science fiction. What if Neanderthals never completely disappeared? Not physically, genetically. If billions of people still carry Neanderthal DNA, and that DNA is still actively influencing how their bodies work, where exactly do we draw the line between extinct and surviving? The Neanderthals disappeared as a separate species, but fragments of them are still walking around today, inside us. In a strange way, extinction wasn't the end of their story. It was a merger. And here's the truly mind-bending part. We've only known Denisovans existed for about 15 years. 15. That's nothing. Scientists are still discovering what their DNA actually does, still finding new genetic variants, still uncovering hidden pieces of our own history. The recent studies didn't add a few new discoveries. They dramatically expanded the known catalog of Denisovan DNA, which means something important. Everything we think we know today may still be incomplete. There are almost certainly more surprises waiting, more forgotten humans, more ancient inheritances, more pieces of ourselves we haven't identified yet. And perhaps the strangest part of all, some of the populations carrying the most Denisovan DNA remain among the least studied in modern medicine, which means some of the biggest discoveries may still be ahead of us, not buried underground, not hidden in caves, hidden inside living people. The next time you look in a mirror, remember something strange. You are not the product of a single human story. You are a merger, a collaboration, a patchwork assembled across tens of thousands of years. Inside you are traces of people who survived Ice Age winters, people who adapted to mountains, people who endured environments that would challenge most of us today, people who lived in worlds completely different from ours, people who disappeared long ago. Or at least, we thought they disappeared. Because in a very real sense, they're still here, and they've been with you all along. We went extinct, and we didn't.